Sherry's mom has died. It was not unexpected. She had been sick for quite a while. When we were with her a couple of weeks ago, she told us that she had made peace for it and that she was ready. But I opened this episode with that explanation because Sherry's not with me, and I thought I would get right into the reason Sherry's not with me for this episode of the Intoxicated podcast, because she's always with me. But it was the right thing to do for her. She's taking some time. She's doing some work, and she's taking some personal time, and she's grieving and reflecting. And frankly, right now she's packing to head to Southern Indiana for the services. When this episode is published, we will have returned back from the services, and hopefully things will have gone smoothly. But that's what she's doing right now. I know that every listener will 100% respect that. In fact, I've talked quite a bit on this podcast about my problems with workaholism, and a listener might be listening to this thinking, Jesus, Matt, why didn't you take the week off? Why do you feel compelled that you've got to get an episode out? The fact is, in the, I don't know what it is now, 6 years we've been doing this podcast, we've never missed a week. Since we started the weekly, that became the cadence. We've never missed a week. There are lots of times where we've recorded episodes in advance so we could go on vacation or because of obligations, but we've never missed a week. And that's part of why you're hearing my voice today, because I felt compelled, and it is, part of my ongoing challenges to find the right work-life balance. But there's another reason. I mean, if it was just that, I could probably talk myself away from this recording device and say, screw it, we don't have to publish an episode this week. But some things have happened in the early days since my mother-in-law died that are epiphanies, and they're relatable. They're relatable for people who have experienced alcoholism, addiction, family dysfunction, turmoil, trauma, chaos, all of these things. And so I have a message that's very relevant to the topics we cover on this podcast. And so I wanted to share it while it's fresh in my head. I will tell you, I ran this outline past Sherry. She is on board with everything that I'm going to say, even though she's not here to say it with me. The last interaction that Sherry had with her mother was not good. It was toxic. It was harsh, unforgettable words were spoken. I'm not going to give any more detail than that because I don't want to disparage Sherry's mother, especially not now. I mean, the timing would be horrible. I would be a horrible human to get into the details, and I'm not going to do it. The only thing I'm going to say is that Sherry did not engage. She, I know it's a cliche, but she took the high road. When it became toxic, she didn't fight back, and she did everything she could to bring the conversation back around to civility and emotional safety, a topic that we talk a lot about on the podcast. So I think in the long run, Sherry can feel really good about the way she handled herself in that conversation and the way she almost always handles herself, especially since she and I have done so much recovery work and gotten so far away from active alcoholism. But in the moment, of course, there's guilt. There's debilitating guilt. No matter how many of our friends and our family here locally in Denver tell her she didn't do anything wrong, it still hurts, and you still second guess yourself. I've shared the full story with the details with a few people, and Sherry has as well, people that we're close with. And that's one of the reasons that you're hearing my voice today, because I've been shocked by the number of people that have related, that have said, yeah, I had a close family member, usually a parent, who in their kind of dying days, they said horrible things. And it has left a lasting mark, and it's a hard thing to get over. And one of the things we do on the podcast, one of the things we try to do is to discuss the hard things and to help each other to get over them. And so rather than shy away from this, rather than pick some, kind of half important but less emotionally fraught topic just so we could get a podcast episode out and say that we never missed a week, with Sherry's permission, I decided to go ahead and record this. It'll be shorter than our normal episodes. I don't have a script. I normally have much more prep work done in advance of recording episodes. I just have one page of handwritten notes. And so I don't know how long this will go. I'll just talk until I've said it all. And then I'll stop talking. And I know some of you are saying, if Matt talks until he thinks he said it all, this is going to be an hours and hours and hours long podcast. It won't be. But yeah, go ahead and chuckle at that if you are so inclined. You definitely won't hurt my feelings. So many other people related to this. I have had, it's so funny. You get to our age where your kids are launching and you think that you're this empty nesting. We're not too empty nesting, but you think as you're approaching empty nesting, oh, we're going to travel and we're going to vacation and we're going to have all this freedom. But then what happens is your parents, require increasing attention as they're getting older. And I know this is the circle of life, and I know this has been happening for centuries. It just kind of recently occurred to me. So even though it's information that's widely available and I should have been able to anticipate, this will come as no shock to most of our regular listeners. I didn't anticipate it because I'm just not that forward thinking. But now I'm in the middle of it, and there are things about it that are nice. It's nice to be needed and wanted by parents, but it also kind of sucks, watching your parents get old. That's hard. And so I've been thinking a lot about how I am going to behave, what my wishes, wants, desires, what my communication is going to be like when I'm getting older, when I'm nearing the end of my run. And I'm really worried because I see things that I don't, habits, I see personality traits, I see things that I don't want to have happen to me. And I'm afraid that they're just part of old age. And so I'm scared to death. I don't want to, I don't want to say regrettable things to my kids. I've worked so hard to repair and just really bolster the relationship with my kids. A big part of that is, as opposed to having this hierarchical view of family, in other words, I'm the patriarch, I'm the father, you are the children, thou shalt, you will listen to me, I have all the knowledge, I will impart it on you. Instead of behaving that way, I've tried to learn something from my kids almost every interaction. I've got 2 that are well into developing what their careers are, 2 others that have some ideas about career and will move that direction, here in the next few years. And so they've got areas of expertise, all 4 of them do, that are different than mine. And I try to learn from them. I try to show interest. I try to make sure they know, not that I'm proud of them for their grades, but that I'm learning from them. And I find conversation interesting because they have things to share that I don't. And I think a lot of what we have seen differs from that. It's, who do you think you are? And, I don't know, just you will respect the generational differences between us. And so it's making things hard. And I hope that isn't how I become. And the only thing that I can think of that inspires communication like that is that maybe when I'm old, I will be clinging to the fact that I am the patriarch, and I will cling to that while other things are slipping away, while my independence is slipping away, while my health is slipping away, while I'm no longer in control of things I've been in control of my whole life. I wonder if that's kind of what brings it out. you will respect me as the this because I'm trying to hold on to something. I don't know, but I'm going to work like hell to not let that happen and to continue to honor and respect and learn from my children, because I think that helps them with their self-esteem. And as I am firmly committed to believing, there's nothing more important to our own growth, our own maturity, our own exploration of whatever is next in life. And yes, also our own recovery from alcoholism. There's nothing more important to all of that than self-esteem, self-confidence, feeling good about ourselves. And so anything I can do, rather than to impart all my knowledge onto my kids, but instead of that, to learn something from them and make sure they know how valuable I find them, not just as humans, but also as people exploring the world, and I can learn from the things they've explored. I think that's really, really important. So the main kind of epiphany that I've had, the main thing that I want to discuss and that I want to bring across in this episode is Sherry and I work with a lot of people who are in abusive relationships, mostly emotionally abusive, alcoholic relationships, sometimes physically abusive, sometimes sexually abusive, lots of different varieties of abuse. And there are some instances where we've gotten to know people very, very well, and the abuse is really, really bad, really bad. And I'm not just saying really bad because it's physically really bad. I'm saying, we experience through other people financial abuse, like draining of accounts, and the person that we're working with doesn't have a job, and so they're reliant on the money in those accounts and the job of the other person, and then they're left destitute, illegally. Just they're still married, and all of a sudden there's no money in the checking account, and he's saying, fuck you, good luck. So all kinds of different abuses, and sometimes it's so bad and there's no redemption in sight, there's no sobriety in sight, there's no recovery in sight, there's no reason to have optimism that the person who is the abuser is going to make any kind of change in their ways. And then that person passes away. We've seen it, a lot of times, or is some other way kind of permanently removed from the situation. And you just feel a sense of relief for the person that is the victim. This has been going on, for years for me, being involved in these relationships. And then I see the freedom come and I think, oh, thank God, thank God, thank God. This person who is being abused is free. I'm sure, in most cases, there's, financial dysfunction that they're still going to have to work through, and other family things, and they got to deal with the kids. And so I'm not saying that even in my naivete that existed a week ago, that I thought, oh, smooth sailing, yay, this person died, so now the victim is free and everything will be fine. But there has always been for me a strong feeling of relief that the abuse is over and the person can rebuild and move on. What I'm coming to grips with now is the complexity of the immediately after the death takes place. That transition to that, hopefully, that ability to be free from the abuse and the toxicity, that transition is so hard. It's complex. And as Sherry said when she and I were discussing it, it's complex because people are complex. If humans were predictable and smooth sailing, then the transition wouldn't be so hard. But yes, I'm talking about the grieving process. And yes, there are steps to grieving. I understand that. But the thing I want to specifically kind of hone in on is that even when it ends badly, even when the last words exchanged were hurtful, there are still, in most cases, there are still so many good memories that just in sheer numbers are probably going to outweigh the bad ones. Maybe the recent memories are bad. Maybe the kind of bad is really piling up, specifically in alcoholism. And let me make clear that Sherry's mom did not suffer from alcoholism. So like I said, I'm not going to give you the details, but I do want to say that wasn't part of it. But specifically in alcoholism, it's a progressive disease. So it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So a lot of the recent memories for people that have experienced loss, like the one I'm describing, is the recent memories are really bad. And you have to go in the Wayback Machine to find the good memories. But even so, often there are a lot of good memories. And even so, the good memories probably outweigh the bad memories. And so that you're left in this really complex, grief-stricken situation where you've lost someone. You feel the relief because the toxic side of things won't continue to happen. And you have really raw and recent memories of some of the bad stuff, but you've got this huge pile of good memories when that person was there for you, when that person maybe nurtured you, when the connection was good, when just fun stuff happened, right? Holidays or vacations or just a great afternoon at the ballpark, or, this church function, or when you played the saxophone in the band and it went really well, just whatever. You've got this huge pile of good memories. And you're like, what do I do with these when I'm also dealing with this really bad stuff? And how do I work that all through? And I think, especially in the case of what Sherry's going through with it being a mother-daughter relationship, there is unconditional love. I've explained many, many times my opinion about love and unconditional love, and the fact that partnership, romantic relationships, marriages, that is absolutely conditioned love. Both partners bring certain conditions to the table. They make commitments to meet those conditions. And so that is, I think on a Hallmark movie, you might hear, oh, I love you so much. My love for you is unconditional. That's bullshit. Partnered love is absolutely built. You picked each other out. There were attributes, conditions that made you pick each other out. A parent-child relationship, that's unconditional. That's, at some point, I depended on you as my parent to take care of me. I wouldn't have survived without you. And that love I feel for you because you are my nurturer as the child is unconditional as well. It can be bruised, it can be hurt, it can even be broken, it can be destroyed. But it is unconditional in nature. And when we've got these complex relationships where you've got this pile of good stuff, this pile of bad stuff, probably lots and lots of mundane, kind of uncategorizable stuff in the middle, you got to reconcile all that. And that's a huge part of the grieving process. And so for me, when I've worked with folks that have been on the receiving end of abuse, they've been victims, and the abuser either dies or is some other way permanently removed from the situation. I'm so relieved this person can move on now. Thank God. Good for them. And it's not until this week that I've given real consideration to how complex that process is and how much time it takes. Yeah, I know grieving isn't overnight. I get it. I've grieved to some extent myself, but I did not understand how thoroughly challenging, and how you always give room for someone that's grieving to have mood swings up and down. But I've never heard anyone talk about it in a way that I could understand, at least. So I've never had anyone dumb it down enough for me, I guess. But what those, at least partially what those waves are, is I'm remembering some really good stuff, and I'm missing that person. I'm missing them desperately, and I wish they were here. And now I'm remembering some really bad stuff. And I'm glad they're gone. And I have to deal with the fact that there's a part of me that's glad they're gone. And that's really hard. That's really hard. And so as someone who's been the victim of abuse, as someone who's been in an alcoholic relationship, as someone that suffered trauma at the hands of another fallible human, I think the complexity of working through the grieving process, I have a much better understanding for it. And so I've got a ton of empathy for all of our listeners that have or are experiencing that. And I get what you're going through, not just in a I'm here to support and I know it's hard and good luck kind of way. Like I'm witnessing it. I'm experiencing it to some degree myself. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I want to share a quote that someone in our Echoes of Recovery group shared with us just today, just this very day that I'm recording this podcast, in a second. But first, I want to talk about what has allowed me to have this epiphany, to have this understanding. And, I don't know, like maybe I'm falling on deaf ears here. Maybe you've already turned off the episode, in which case you can't hear what I'm about to say. But maybe you're still hanging in and you're like, God, this guy's, can't believe it's taken him to this point to figure out what grieving and empathy looks like. But for me, this is a big epiphany. And what allowed me to have this understanding is that I'm not spending like 90% of my free thought time. So you got your work time and you got your chores and your tasks and your daily grind kind of stuff. But then you've got this time where you can allow your brain to, you can read, you can learn something, you can process something. You've got this free thought time. I have a lot more of that now that I'm not in active alcoholism and I'm not in early sobriety fighting the urges to be back into a relapse. Now my mind I can do a lot more just kind of healthful, growthful thinking. And so my ability to even understand what I'm talking about today depends entirely on my accountability. I had to take accountability for my drinking and for the associated dysfunction and the trauma and chaos and work through all of that to get to a point where I can be forward thinking and growth oriented. And that was really hard, but it was all about accountability. Sherry also, accountability is a huge factor in what she's going through right now. So if you relate to Sherry's experience, and I know so many of our listeners, the vast majority of our listeners relate to Sherry. If you relate to Sherry, accountability was huge for her because in that last conversation with her mom, she held her tongue. She didn't fire back. She, cliche, but she took the high road. She didn't engage. And the reason she didn't engage wasn't because she didn't want to, wasn't because she didn't have passionate feelings. The reason she didn't engage was because she knew she had to be accountable for her feelings. And if she said things that she later regretted, she'd have to work through that and deal with the feelings of grief and offer apology and ask for forgiveness and all of that. And so to avoid all of that, she was accountable to herself and didn't go the place where her just instinctual human urges maybe were encouraging her to go. And so accountability is really, really important to both of us and our ability to understand what's going on right now. I'm going to tie accountability into our weekly SoberLink promo. Let me tell you this. I could have skipped the SoberLink promo, even though we're contractually obligated to talk about them on every episode. They're awesome people. They would have understood if I skipped them this week. There would have been no flack. There would have been they wouldn't have said, hey, give us some of our money back. They wouldn't have been anything like that. They're awesome. They're awesome people. But rather than have a scripted SoberLink promo, I want to talk about accountability because SoberLink is something I truly, when I was learning about accountability, when I was taking accountability for my drinking and my need for sobriety, I wish, looking back, I most sincerely wish I had had SoberLink. I wish it was available then, and I wish I had bought it. Here's why. It's not the single solution. You don't just get SoberLink and then, which is, for those that are unfamiliar, it's kind of class-leading technology in handheld breathalyzer technology. And you don't just have that and then boom, I'm sober and nothing to see here. Sometimes the thing that keeps you sober is that kind of white knuckling resolve. Sometimes it's going to your tools, getting out in nature, getting something to eat, staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, talking to someone. Sometimes that's the thing that keeps you sober. Sometimes the thing that keeps you sober is playing it forward. Oh, yeah, I know I could have just like 2 beers, but I know myself. And if I have 2 beers, I'm going to have 6 or 8 or 10, and I'm going to argue with my wife, and I'm going to be full of regret. Sometimes that's the thing that keeps you sober, playing it forward. But sometimes the thing that could keep me sober, I know myself well at this point, is knowing that I got to go blow in this test unit twice a day. And if that blows hot, I got to deal with it. And so I don't want to deal with that. So I'm not gonna blow. So I am gonna blow. I'm not gonna drink so that I get a positive test. So that accountability, which we always say SoberLink's an accountability tool, it's incredibly important. It's not the solution. It's just part of the solution. It's one of the tools, but I wish I had it. If you are interested, there is an opportunity for you to get $100 off your SoberLink device. Get an offer ID for a $100 discount. Go to soberlink.com/untoxicated. And so to the folks at SoberLink, thank you for letting me just talk through how accountability applies in my life as opposed to reading the script that we normally have as an agreed upon thing. So let's get to that memory or that quote that I want to share from someone in our Echoes of Recovery group that I heard literally today. That person talking about similar to what we're talking about. It fits. Let's put it that way. It fits. She said that the good memories, the good relationship memories are priceless. And so if they're priceless, how can the bad compare? Obviously, priceless besides being, I think it was a MasterCard commercial. Besides being a MasterCard commercial, priceless means it's so valuable we can't put a price tag on it. And so if the good memories are priceless, and in her opinion, the memories that she had were priceless, then how can the bad things that happen, how can they compare to priceless? Priceless is so great, you can't assign it a value. So when you're going through something like what Sherry's going through, where you've got this complex relationship with this complex human, and you got the good over here and the bad over here, and you got a bunch of mundane somewhere in the middle, and some of the good is so good, like this human kept you alive when you were an infant and took care of you and taught you things and nurtured you and fed you and clothed you and sheltered you. Truly, truly priceless things that someone can do for someone else, a parent for a child. When you've got these priceless memories, how can the bad stuff, how can that last conversation compare? It was bad, it was terrible, things were said that are hurtful, but you're also the person that raised me and kept me alive. You're the person that birthed me, that grew me inside of you. It's a really good point. And so as soon as I heard that from someone in our Echoes of Recovery group, I knew I had to share it. Last thing I want to talk about is my role in our relationship right now. My role is to support. My wife was attacked, verbally attacked. Things were said, and that's my person. This is not my mother. This is my mother-in-law, and that relationship is very different than the relationship I have with my mother, the relationship that Sherry had with her mother. And so my person, the person that I hold, at the highest on my totem pole, was attacked. And so my reaction, I think my natural reaction, is a whole lot of anger. Anger for the way Sherry was treated. But now we're about to head to the services, the family, mourning, grieving time, and I have to put that anger aside. That's not important. And I got to tell you, until just a few hours ago, I was really struggling with that. How am I going to get through this? And just, I'm not a fan of pushing emotions down. So I have to look at it differently. It's not me just shoving my emotions down and prioritizing Sherry's over mine, although I would do that if I needed to. Sherry's obviously her grieving. It's her mother. All of her feelings are more important than mine right now. They just are. But I would rather find a healthy way rather than just shove my anger down and consider it not valid. I would rather view it through the lens of something that we've been talking about a lot in the past few weeks, and that is emotional masculinity. I have the opportunity to provide emotional safety for my wife and be a shoulder to cry on, deflect anything that comes at her that she's not, in a position to receive during this time. To sacrifice, that's a big part of emotional masculinity that we've just recently introduced, to put her needs in front of mine, and to do all of this without feeling like I'm taking my anger and I'm shoving it down and I guess my feelings don't matter. I guess it doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't. Sherry's the daughter of the deceased, so her feelings matter way more than mine. But I don't have to look at it like I've got to, everything she feels matters and everything I feel doesn't matter, and I got to shove it down. I can look at it like this is my opportunity to be the man that Sherry needs, and to create the emotional safety, to give her an outlet to express herself. When she falls apart, to be there for her, to cry on my shoulder. If someone's coming at her in a way that feels uncomfortable to her, to step in and try to take the temperature down on any interactions like that. And when she's ready to go, we'll go. And if she's having a great conversation with, Aunt so-and-so or Uncle so-and-so, and they're off in the corner and they're remembering some great things about Sherry's mom, and they're hooting and hollering and laughing, and they want to do that for, some period of time, great. Or if they're crying on each other's shoulders, great. Like, I have, my role is through this context of emotional masculinity is trying to put a bubble around her and let her experience the complexity of this person that's so challenging, the good, the mundane, and the bad, and let her work through that with people where she might find comfort working through it, and just be on the sidelines and be that protector. And I have to tell you, from someone who has grown up conditioned toward masculinity, and I think I've probably got a genetic predisposition to it, and certainly thousands and millions of years of just the way the world has worked and the culture has evolved toward men being masculine. I can do that in this scenario, and feel like by being emotionally masculine, I'm providing a great service to my wife and allowing her to be the person she needs to be. So that's my plan. We'll see how it works out. Sherry will be on the next episode. The next episode, I believe, is our Ask Laura episode. So it'll not just be Sherry and I, but we will also have questions for a real live therapist that we've been soliciting from our listeners. And we've got a great lineup of questions to ask Laura. But Sherry will be back, and hopefully we both will have grown, another chapter, another painful chapter, but a chapter that we needed to experience, and we're going to experience it together. And hopefully we will have grown into even, to the next step in our evolution, in our getting healthier. And so hopefully you'll hear some cheery voices the next time you download a podcast episode. I just want to leave everybody with this. I have mad respect for people who have gone through this. The death of a parent, the death of a partner, the end of a relationship with a particularly toxic or abusive partner, there's a whole middle layer that has been added for me. There is the active toxic period that you have to live through, when you're walking through hell, keep on going so you can get to the other side, that kind of piece of it. And then there's the relief when you start to get healthier and you're growing out of it and you've got your voice back and you're not living small anymore and your nervous system is regulated. There's that. And those two pieces I've understood for a long time. I have mad respect for the people that have made that transition, have dealt with the complexity of other humans, have dealt with the complexity of the emotions they feel for the other human, whether that other person, whatever they offered, the good, the bad, and the mundane. And so maybe I now understand something that every other person has already understood. You can tell I've got a lot of insecurity about this topic because I feel like I've learned something I should have known for a long time. But this discussion with myself was therapeutic for me, and I hope it was helpful for some of you. I want to thank you all for listening to the Untoxicated podcast, and just know that you've got this and we've got you, and we're very thankful that you're here for us as well.